Hey, let's talk about structure. So where are we today? This is the token economics framework. We have talked about market design two lessons ago. And right now we are at mechanism design. We have talked about governance, the different decision-making and consensus protocols, resolution mechanism. And for non-financial incentives, we have talked about voting protocols as well as allocation mechanisms. And we talked about the different projects that have implemented them, the pros and cons, and how you can combine them together to design your kind of non-financial incentive. Because they can work on its own, but if you can combine them together to design very new, creative, innovative solutions, specifically for your ecosystem to achieve the objectives that you want, that's the goal. There is no one answer. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you just take bits and pieces, try to fix them together to get the piece that you want. And today we're going to talk about structure. In structure, we're going to look at bargaining protocols as well as community information. And then together we'll sum up what mechanism design is about. And we're going to sum this up with MakerDAO's case study. Okay, so what's the purpose? When we talk about structure, because we're talking about a technological structure, we're talking about a tech deck, like technology. So one big chunk of structure in technology is information and data. How information and data flows, how can we trust them, what kind of information we're looking for, just all the questions and around the structure of data and information. So that's what we're focusing a lot on here now, or in this structure section. So we're looking at how information relates to each other in the ecosystem. And it's not just within the ecosystem, it can be within the bigger ecosystem. It can be within the other dApps, multi-chain, or even off-chain. So just how information relates to each other, the structure of this information. Why? Because this information and data is absolutely crucial to coordinate activities, to transact, and to trade. This is especially important because we're talking about tech. If we're talking about, I don't know, like physical shops, then tech or data and information is important, but it's not the big core thing. You know, the physical product, it's probably very important. It's probably a little bit more important. And ideally, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the information and data is efficient and robust against collusion and attacks. And let's see what that means. Before that, I want to talk about what kind of information we're talking about. So there's three types of information we're talking about here. We've got on-chain. So here you've got chain, like little chains that I drew that's on-chain, and then you've got the cloud, which is off-chain. The cloud, I use clouds because it's a lot easier when we're talking about tech, and they can transact information and data easier because the structure of data is slightly similar than physical off-chain, where we're talking about Bing and Tesco and the goods and services. But that being said, it's not limited to just cloud, off-chain on cloud. Off-chain can be anything. Off-chain is anything that's not on-chain. Duh. So what kind of information are we talking about in the structure of this information? First, you have on-chain information. As I mentioned, it could be, different types of dApps. Like it can be CryptoKitties that's based on Ethereum and MakerDAO that's based on Ethereum. Or it can be cross-chain. So it can be Tron and Loom Network and Cosmos. Different types of like cross-chain. Or it can be even within the ecosystem itself. So MakerDAO it can be different aspects of MakerDAO coming together and you need this kind of information. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this type of on-chain information later. The second type of information we're talking about is off-chain to on-chain. So how do you aggregate information off-chain and put them on-chain, or what kind of information we're looking for off-chain so that they're relevant on-chain? Examples would be we talk a lot about exchanges, right? Especially when in DeFi, decentralized financing, you want to know the prices of the asset, the tokens, and usually get them through exchanges. And exchanges are not on-chain. I mean, you have decentralized exchanges that can be on-chain, but there are also a lot of exchanges that's off-chain, that's not on blockchain, that's built somewhere else, built in the cloud or whatever. and we get that information. Let's say we get the price of Ether, or we get a price of Cosmos or Tron. Take them from the exchange and bring them on-chain because they are relevant to the specific things that you're looking for. The information is relevant to trade or to transact. So that's something that's off-chain to on-chain. On-chain to off-chain, though, it's information on-chain, and then you kind of export it off-chain, export it to the real world. And that something that's probably a little easier is payments. So if I'm buying a cup of coffee and I'm paying an amount of Bitcoins, transactions are done on-chain, and that's information being transacted. Then when the information says that I have received the Bitcoin, then information is sent to off-chain, and off-chain will say that, okay, payment is done, and now you can take your cup of coffee back. So that's an example of off-chain, and you have got two layers of off-chain. The first layer of off-chain is that payment is being received, and then the cashier system is tells you that, okay, payment is being received, and then you can take your coffee, which is the physical product, and take it home. So that's on-chain to off-chain. So there are a lot of issues to consider when we are talking about structure of data and just information and data. So these are just a few questions that it's worthy to think about. It's not all. There are a lot more issues that you have to think about, and it really depends on your token function, your business model, your objective of the ecosystem. So, for example, how often these participants transact with each other? Are there issues with possible large influence? Maybe not just large influence of a person that holds a lot of tokens, but large influence of data coming in, of clean data or messy data or just raw information. How do you process that? The possibility of arbitrage. Talk about arbitrage. So, we have different exchanges, and is there a possibility of arbitrage because different exchanges have different prices? Bargaining in the ecosystem. What is fair in the ecosystem? How do you determine what's fair? Who do you trust? How do you trust the information given? And who determines the credibility of information? Also, because everything is decentralized, you have to think more about these kind of credibility and trust, right? Who do we trust? Do we always trust machines? And to what extent do we rely on machines? 100%? What happens when there are attacks on the validity of information, or there are attacks on information itself? How do you deal with attacks? And what happens when the off-chain will collapse? Or because we get information on-chain to on-chain, what if the other on-chain will collapse? So, because the structure of data and information, it connects all these like decentralized parts together. It's very important to consider the information and data itself.